Welcome to the December 4th, December 12th, 2016 Facilities and Finance Committee meeting of the School District of Waukesha Board of Education. First on the agenda is the meeting properly posted.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Next on the agenda is opportunity for citizens to speak, and I don't see anybody here tonight, so we're going to jump right past that. And then we're going to rearrange things a little bit tonight. We're going to go to the discussion items because we got a special guest here tonight to talk about the planetarium equipment request. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just a little quick background. We talked about this last month, and you started asking questions about the number of people visiting the planetarium. So this is just a follow-up, rather than me attempting to answer all those questions. I thought it'd just be easier to bring Dave in and talk about some of his equipment issues.
Oh, why Dave is getting moved up. Who's our, I haven't met.
Oh, Sherry Stack is our new director of finance. She's replacing Joe Sikora, Joseph Sikora. She's been on board, well, she was an accountant in my office when I came here, has been with the district two. So she's, any questions you have in terms of vouchers and all that will be directed to her now. But she's been in this position for a month or so.
A little over a month, yeah.
So.
Okay. Wow, looks like we're on the screen.
All right.
Are we ready to go?
We've got it rolling here. Once again, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. The original Charles Horwitz Planetarium was, I don't know why it's going forward here, but opened in 1978, and I was the first director. And it's proudly named after Mr. Charles Horwitz, who was a well-respected science teacher. So we're always kind of proud of that idea that instead of just being a donor from the community or someone else that is important in the community, which it's kind of nice to have a teacher back the planetarium in name. So for 38 years completed now, we have just passed our 500,000 mark for the number of people we've served. That picture you saw in the last one was the original planetarium. Now we have moved to Retzer Nature Center in 2005, and our new facility has given us a chance to expand our program much more into the community. And so with the help of Retzer Nature Center, the venue is excellent. We've also brought people into the park, so it's a grand cooperation, a great learning facility for earth and space science. I was asked to show the different types of programs and what we do for the different grade levels. Divided by sector, it's almost even. Our commitment to Waukesha Schools students, we do programs for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 8th, and high school. So we're basically a K-12 program, and we're well ingrained in the science curriculum, as you well know. About a third of our programming then is Waukesha School students. Then we also do out-of-town groups, and the beauty of that is they pay to come to see the programs that help support our program. And then we have quite a range of public programs and private shows like scouts, church groups, daycares, and so on. So we have a number of sources of income, and over the years we've expanded on those, not only the out-of-town schools, but we've expanded our public programs, our private programs, and we have donations. We have a Friends Network that we've been operating since the year 2000, so that's 16 years in play. And we also use part of the gift shop at Retzer Nature Center. So our attendance averages to about, it's almost 20,000. It says 15. I wanted to go over 15,000 a year. Visitors come to the planetarium. So that's a great attendance. And then income averages about 30,000, 33,000 a year over the 10-year period. What we have right now is equipment that used to be very effective teaching tools using slide projectors and number of tricks and ways that we can get them to work over the years. And the projectors, we have the same DOS programming system that we've used for quite some time, and of course carousel trays and DOS controlled timing equipment. At least 50 slide projectors are in play for every program. We clean and repair them and organize them and the slides. It's rather high maintenance at this point to keep those projectors going. They don't really offer programs in slide formats anymore, and that's really why I've come today. Just as it says there, it's rather exciting. A new era in planetarium presenting altogether. Full dome projection now is the standard of the industry for planetariums. And it's basically putting images on the whole sky, just as IMAX sort of does, only with digital technology. Most planetariums, prospering ones like ours, have already switched over their theaters to full dome formats. We'd have new and modern and current resources available if we were to switch to this format. The systems, the reason we didn't do this 10 years ago when the new planetarium opened is because this was just an emerging technology at that point. They had just come out with these full dome systems. They weren't reliable, they hadn't been tested, and the resolution wasn't that great. But over 10 years, and I put in here, the systems, there've been a lot of competition in the industry, and they've improved greatly in quality and reliability. And the share networks between planetariums now are one of the great resources for us. Once you get into a certain system, some of the systems offer it, then you can share with other planetariums that have the same system. So there's sort of a cloud network that you'd be privy to. What else did I put here? Yeah, just the idea that the experience of a full dome, kind of an immersive feeling, is a learning experience in itself. And the beauty of these new systems is other sciences can be taught. These have extensive educational programs in biology, in chemistry. We can search out for other programs. There's a wonderful human body one where you can go down to skeletal and muscular structure, and I've seen demonstrations on these. They're just phenomenal, and I think the learning opportunities would be grand. And we already have the theater, so it's the software and the equipment that we're looking for here. Okay, let me go forward. So I've reviewed a number of different systems, and a few have bubbled to the top. And there are just two here that I think are standard of the industry. The share networks are very accessible. The Daniel Sorf Planetarium at the Milwaukee Public Museum just had $1.5 million upgrade to a Digistar 6. We would be getting, if this were approved, we would like to get the same system, but they have to fill a much larger dome at the Milwaukee Public Museum than we would. So we would get the same software, but the projection system would be much smaller. So the cost wouldn't be nearly as much. But we would essentially have the same product. If they have a Digistar 6, it's called, and another top quality company, and I sat and did a lot of work at the last conference figuring out how it works. The Spitz Side Dome has an excellent educational package, so there's existing programs already in there, or program pieces we'd be able to put together and have our theater up and running by next school year if we were to do, well, I'd like to go on to the next slide because I'll tell you about that. I do have a handout that I think all of you have. Darren, did you say you gave that to them?
Yeah, the actual proposal or plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's document here.
Right.
It's on page 1 of your packet.
If you wouldn't mind taking a look at that, deep down in it. The third, we've kind of gone over the equipment and the proposal, but if we can skip down to, it says, the, kind of the timeline, I should have it with me here, but, the plan, and Todd and I have talked about this a bit, and Darren, about the timing. Proposed plan, we were thinking a good time to do this would be in June of next year, because then we could use the summer for training. June is a month that I don't have a lot of programs. We wouldn't be interfering with the school schedule if we did this upgrade in June. We would have the staff and the theater technicians would have enough time to get a library program. We need between 15 and 20 new programs ready to go by the fall of, by the time the school year starts in 2017. So it would give us a couple of months to do that, to get, there'd be extensive rewiring and revamping of our program library. So it's a lot of work, but we could be up and running by then, the fall, for the school year to open in the fall of 2017. It would also give us some time for advertising and marketing of the new theater for the public, because it'll be a great attraction once we get, we can say we have full dome video and digital sound and the whole package ready to go. It brings people into the theater right off the bat. So community support, if you look on that, I had some ideas about raising our public fees. We have just started a Scout Merit Badge certificate in 2 departments in the Scouts, working with the local Potawatomi and some Scout leaders. We had some of our staff certified now for those badges, and we'll be starting to bring in a lot more Scouts than we used to. I think promoting our dome, and if the board were to look at this information and decide to go ahead, then we could start looking around for donations or grants or some sort of other funding to help us along. So I didn't want to go and start asking for donations before we have approval to do it. So it's sort of informational to let you all know what we're doing, let you know that the theater, just like any other science lab, needs upgrading every once in a while, and here we want to upgrade to the modern tools of teaching in our classroom like you have in the other classrooms. So that's it. I had just one more thing, a reputation of excellence. The planetarium, as you know, Mr. Como and I were talking about this beforehand, how over the years we have a great positive following, and we've built up a reputation. Those things have to be earned. The community respects us. It's a place to bring children they know is going to be safe and educational, and we've earned that. And I think it's time to upgrade, and I hope you can consider this for us. So thank you again. So any questions you want to ask me about the equipment or the upgrade possibilities?
Karen?
Thank you. Well, this is exciting, and I want to thank you for bringing this to us. You're exactly right. When we talk about our other technology in our classrooms and in the kids' hands, we've upgraded that, and I see the need here with your slides. A question I have and a concern is that is the cost, of course, and I just want to make sure that people know that we're doing this and this is going to get the word out there, but that also, if they have any used equipment, and I know we got the used equipment last time, when we're talking about, when you mentioned the Friends, was it the Planetary Friends, then would that be a resource where they would realize that you're ready to go and you would like some things, and then they're already probably upgrading again or whatever? How would you get the word out there to places like IMAX, Discovery World, places that have something like this?
Yeah, we would notify the Friends of the Planetarium that the upgrade was approved by the board, and we went ahead if this is what we want to do, and what the timeline is on that. they would be the ones, they're our main support network, so we would talk to them first, and we would have an evening with the Friends of the Planetarium, a fundraiser, if you will, and we'd get the word out started, and they hopefully would spread the word around, and then we would start to talk to some companies. I've worked, and I've talked with Dale Shaver from the county. He and I had some ideas, and Dwayne over there at the county, we thought maybe the county would be interested too, because they have a stake in the planetarium and the success of our facility. Also, I wrote down some ideas. I have some people at GE Medical who I might be able to talk to, Waukesha State Bank, Waukesha Educational Foundation, Waukesha County Community Foundation. So I have looked at some ideas, people we could go to ask, and I thought, we would get your ideas on that too, and Darren and I could talk about the possibilities. And what Mr. Gray, Dr. Gray and I talked about was spreading the cost over a couple fiscal budgets would help a lot. If we could do this in June, it would essentially be in this year's budget, and then next year's budget, and even if we had to go another year, we could save the money for it.
And that, maybe it wasn't the Friends of the Planetarium. Of course, that would be an avenue to ask, but I wrote it down, your share networks. When you were talking about the networks that are already utilizing equipment that has been updated, how will those people know that we're looking?
Well, their theaters that have their own equipment, and they had to pay for it as well. I don't know if we'd get money from them or anything like that.
Not money,
but
I'm just meaning
the
equipment.
share.
Well, like this list of all this equipment,
Mm-hmm.
would someone have something like this that they've upgraded again, or they have something, oh, you know what, I have this laying around. It's not like they can,
I see.
put it on Craigslist and someone's gonna call and
Yeah.
want it. If something's sitting somewhere and we need it, how do we let people know that?
I asked around enough to find out that it's just not done. These systems are all computer-based, and so when you buy computer systems, you want to get the most up-to-date and modern computer that you can. And so I did, though, in the projector side of it, talk to our Michael Dott at Digistar, and he talked to some people at Sony that he knew, and they were using 2 Sony laser projectors, and they were only using them for demos, and he would agree to come down $30,000 on those projectors if we bought them within a certain time. I said, well, our board meeting was the 12th of December, and so he had a chance to get used projectors, but they were only used for demos. It depends how many hours there are on them and that sort of thing. So there is the possibility to get projectors that have use, but I wouldn't recommend buying any software that's older or computers that's older. But I think we can make some ground on that, and already. And Michael Dott, he was pretty tough to deal with on getting this price, but with 30,000 less, that puts that in the same ballpark as the side dome. So we'd be looking at about 320,000. And the side dome, they want a little more of a commitment that we're going ahead, and I think they would negotiate their price down as well. I think we could maybe get projectors, and I was talking to Mark Webb from the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, and they are taking out their smaller theater projectors, their JVCs, and he said that they might be able to get those to us. I'm a little leery about buying used projectors because you don't have a warranty, but it's certainly something I would pursue. I think it's a very good question, and I would do my best to try to find, a way to get it for less.
I feel better knowing that you're having those conversations, that you're not just, it's not like you go to the store and just buy it without it being
Yeah.
on sale, but just to know that you're shopping around, you're negotiating, you're trying to get the best bang for the buck. And then one question or a comment on when you talked about like the Waukesha Education Foundation, if they did give a donation or a GE or something like that, are you able to then credit them like at the end of the show? Could you say the Waukesha Education Foundation and then give them a plug or something
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
that's a way to ask for funds that they would then be able to have, not a commercial, but, some credits at the end.
Yeah,
Or-
oh, certainly.
Or even GE, is there something where you could tie in a medical, when you were talking about the human body, is there something where you can tie in an engineering video and then they would maybe,
Yeah, and that's something we had thought about, and I'm glad you brought it up because especially our connections at GE, because of GE Medical, that's why this system that I saw by the Spitz Side Dome with their human body demonstration was such a wonderful educational tool that GE may have a use for it in our theater even. And so I've got two people talking to some GE Foundation. I've told them to hang on till I know further what we all decide to do. But yeah, that's definitely something that, and yeah, any company, you kind of work this out with each company. We've done it in the past when we built our new planetarium. We ran promos for companies that donated money. We do 5 different events out at Retzer too: Jamboree, Wild Winter Night, Earth Day, Halloween, and whatever the other one is, Jamboree, or the Apple Harvest Festival. So we're part of all those festivals too. So we bring in large amounts of people, and sometimes we'll get a donor that just wants us to put a feature up before every program. So yeah, we worked that out ahead of time with Waukesha State Bank, gave us money years ago, and we said this show is sponsored by Waukesha State Bank. So yeah, we do almost 500 shows a year, and if we wanted to put up something for each program, that's certainly, I would think a company would like that. So yeah, all that could be thought up, and we could pursue that maybe. Darren might have some ideas, we could talk that over.
Madden?
Do you have any money in this year's budget, Dave?
Not for new equipment.
Nothing left over that you could put into new equipment?
We have to take a look at that. I didn't plan on anything like this. Maybe,
Well,
5 or
we
10,000,
have to
I
ask,
suppose.
because we
Yeah.
are
I don't
definitely
think so,
fiscal
but
responsible, so.
Darren and I could look into it.
Yeah, his budget isn't really designed for this type of.
Right, I know it's not.
We've
Yeah.
already trimmed it down to bare bones as it is, and
But we
we've
can-
been operating very well on that budget. We've done well.
We can take another closer look at that.
This
too.
sort of thing is almost like, a building that needs a new roof. It's a totally different thing than
True, yeah.
Yeah,
And
but it's-
And it's a great project, and it is well worthwhile for the community, so, through the years, many, many people, as you said, have enjoyed that and learned from it, so.
Thank you. We are.
Mr. McCaffrey?
I think that everybody's a fan of the planetarium. I sure am. I think that one of the concerns would be single use, like it's a planetarium. I think that I would be interested if you could do other things, like you had talked about. I know National
Yes.
Geographic has films that can be shown on a dome. I mean, I've seen them at different planetariums around. So for me, spending this kind of money, I would like to get a little bit more out of it. Something a little bit more educational than just the planetarium, where you're getting into other sciences, some biology, some environmentalism, something like that, where you could actually increase your viewership, even out in the public, because I know that some of the stuff that I've seen that National Geographic has put on that could be shown on a projector like this.
Yeah,
I think
we'd
that
be able to do
people in
that.
the public would come and see it
Yeah.
as well, and I think that that's something that we should definitely investigate when we're spending this kind of money. I mean, I think that the planetarium is a very worthwhile program in our district and as the community as a whole, but I think that the scope should be increased, definitely. So if we
Yeah, and that's-
are talking about changing the equipment out, I would need to know that it would be able to be used for different things than just showing the planets and the solar system and whatnot. Another thing is, have you talked to Carol? I know they have an astronomy classes up there. I've taken them. They have
Teach
nothing.
that class there.
Who?
Yeah.
Who?
I taught at
Did
the.
you?
Car-
I had
yeah.
Dr. Welsh. is
Dr.
who I had,
Welsh was
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
mentor.
So, and they don't have anything up there. I mean, we were We were on top of the building with telescopes.
Back when it was
for-
yes, back when it was a college.
Yes, back when it was a college, that's exactly right.
Yeah, I
So,
did
and
teach
I mean, I'm assuming they still have those astronomy classes?
Yeah, I think they have astronomy, the
This is a lab class,
basic
so it's.
class. They
it's-
dropped their physics major, I think, but they still have
yeah,
the astronomy
they
class.
asked for physics, they basically.
Yeah, Carol, and we actually cooperating, I'm on a committee with the environment, county environment, and Carol's in it, and Waukesha County, and the planetarium, and Retzer Nature Center. So we'll be doing environmental programs in the planetarium as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. I
So-
know they have a huge environmental science program out there. Joe Pyatt is,
Yeah.
so,
He's on.
yes. So,
Oh,
for
absolutely.
me, I would need to
exciting.
see more than just the ability to show the night sky. I would need the ability to show other content and material for,
Well, yeah,
but
we,
even for the public at large.
in some ways, we do that now because our programs, not only, the night sky is part of every program, but it's only half of the part. Every show, it has a feature, whether it be space shuttle, whether it be the chemistry of space, whether it be earth science, planetary science, we get into geology. So we do cover sciences within the astronomy realm now, but we would be able to branch out a lot more.
Yeah.
And I
I'd
was
like to
talking
see
to
some
the,
film.
yeah, and the film thing, we could have people
Yeah.
come in and see the films.
Yeah, right.
That's
yeah,
certainly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I know, it's popular at some of the planetariums that they do show that.
Well, I was talking to the director at Notre Dame, and he said they have a DVT, they call it a digital visual theater, and their whole campus is involved in the planetarium where art students come in and do
Right.
art project, music comes in and does, and he offered to help us move our venues to those other areas. So it just, other theaters have done that.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I think that's important when you're
great.
talking, to the tune of $300,000. I mean,
Yeah, so
our ability to use our athletic fields for different things and different sports is what
we'd be able
helped us
to
push
branch
that
out
over the
into
edge.
multi-use, and that's the beauty of the new full dome
Right.
systems. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Mr. Como?
It's good to see you, Dave. As I was talking to you before the meeting a little bit, I hear nothing but compliments on the program that you have. Never have ever had one issue ever come up ever since I've been on the board with anybody complaining. And what was it, roughly 10 years ago, we put the
It's
system
11 now, yep, just over
yeah,
10.
11 years. And we had asked you to do a few things back then. One was to be really frugal with our money. You went out shopping around, looking for used systems. I remember you telling us at the time that there's a lot more newfandangled technology available, but it wasn't ready. It was too new, wrought with issues, and it just wasn't the way to go. So you said, hey, you could scrap this. You could find some good used system out there and put that together. And one of the things that you've proven over the years is you have been frugal with the monies that we have approved for you to use. And there wasn't a part of the budget that we originally approved for maintenance, really, of those projectors, I don't think. And so how much do we spend on maintenance of the projectors? Is it just our manual labor, or are you sending those out? And where do you get that money from right now?
We have a maintenance contract on the Star machine. We did buy a 1985 Star machine when we went out. It was in pristine condition, and we got it from Young Harris College in Atlanta, Georgia area. And it was a great deal, and it was the wise move to make at that time. And it's still functioning. We have a maintenance contract. It's about $5,000 every 2 years. So we pay $2,500 a year to have them come and fully refurbish the Star machine every year. But they also, since they're the ones that designed the theater, they will repair or maintain any other problems we have in the theater when they come as part of that maintenance contract. So we've been able to have them fix cove lighting, fix video tuning, our programming system. So they've been able to tweak up other things we've gotten out of that maintenance contract, but it's basically $2,500 a year.
Yeah, and to me, that seems to be relatively inexpensive, and another example of of how you have been frugal with our monies here. You take that very seriously. That was one thing that I think you've proven over the last 11 years. The other thing is that we asked you to do 11 years ago was to really, you basically were presenting to students within our district and not really much to the community. There was a little bit, but not
Right,
a
we
lot. I think
expanded
actually
quite a
wasn't the
bit.
theater just over here in Lindholm?
the hall here.
Yeah, so where the technology area is right now.
Right.
But, you know, so we'd have busloads of kids coming in. That was a safety issue too back then, was all these kids coming in buses to the Lindholm wasn't necessarily the best. So we improved the safety of, you know, obviously the facilities now are way much better from a busing perspective. But we put forth a challenge 11 years ago to have you really expand and to really think out of the box, something different from, you know, what you were used to educating students in one subject area. And again, you proved that you could do that. I'm actually impressed with some of the numbers of people who've come through in from non-SDW schools and also from the public. Those are some pretty big numbers over the years. So you've really, truly increased the visibility there, which I think is going to help if we decide to move forward with this from a raising of funds, whether they're grant monies or perhaps sponsorships. I really think that the sponsorship idea is really good. That's worked pretty well for our football fields. No reason why we couldn't apply it, like you said, trailers at the end of
Yeah.
your shows, or
Where we could work together on this as a board or as administration, and, yeah.
and you could put together different packages where, you know, perhaps some signage on, on the premise and maybe different levels of sponsorship. Our community has proven time and time again for worthwhile causes, it will put forth the money that's needed for these types of things. And it has been a while since I've attended one of your programs. Sorry, I haven't been out there more frequently, but I do agree with Mr. McCaffrey. If we can expand the topics to other disciplines, that would be great, and maybe even from an entertainment perspective too.
Sure.
So, you would probably be set forth with a challenge of, once again, so you went originally from just teaching students to, you got the community involved. I really like the idea of Boy Scouts. I've served many years on the Potawatomi Area Council Board, and we were always looking for partnerships with good organizations too. I think that's a wonderful idea. That's, again, that's a very specific exposure for a relatively small population, but really important for the continuation of, promoting your trade, really. You get one scout really interested in something, they might take that quite far for their career even. So that was really, I think, a good idea. So I don't look, I wasn't really sure what the dollar amount would be for new equipment. Last time, 11 years ago, what did we spend on the used equipment?
The star projector was 150,000.
50, yeah.
The dome was 108. The chairs were about 30. Cove lighting, 27. We built the building itself was 400,000 around, and we built the whole interior. We got the whole planetarium up and running for another 400. So we stuck to the budget and somehow built the whole theater for 800,000. It's really amazing resource for that.
And the physical facility, the seating, everything, that's still in good?
Yeah, that's all really just fine, yeah. It's just changing over the visual, the projection system to something more modern. The computers are still DOS-based, and they need to be upgraded. So I've been working with Steve Schloman a little bit on that as well.
The shareware, is it really shareware that's available? Is it kind of the same concept of the content really doesn't cost anything once you're in this shareware community, or how's that work? Are there still fees that we're paying for the programs themselves, or?
Some programs would have fees. Some of them have 1-year licenses, some have 5-year licenses, some have lifetime licenses. All those things would have to be evaluated, and I would talk to my fellow planetarium directors. They would tell me which programs are free, which ones are good to have for 5 years. Some of them get outdated, so if it's something very specific, a probe to a planet that's this year, you would only pay the royalties for that year. The share network is more what, like the Daniel Sorf Planetarium in Milwaukee at the Milwaukee Public Museum, they produce a lot of their own programs. And so we would have access to those programs because we're in this cloud network with them. And they have other ones. So anything a planetarium produces on their own and puts into the cloud for availability, anyone in that share network would have that. There are a lot of programs out on the market that you do have to pay for, and we would find as many deals and as many free ones as we could, but we would have to pay for some of them. And the rights for them are based on the number of years that you have them.
Okay.
They're also based on the size of your facility, and so ours is a medium-sized facility.
So in your budgets here, have you included then costs for the software, the programs themselves?
No, some of these, the Evans and Sutherland comes with about 3, and you have to negotiate that with them. And we would negotiate the number of years that the warranty would be in play and the number of programs that would come with the package. So up front, I'd find out which programs we really need and then try to get them to throw that in with the package. And same with Spitz-Sidome. The beauty of Spitz-Sidome is they have a marvelous catalog and library of educational software already in there. So if you buy their instrument, you get all this equipment and this super library, so you would be able to piece together your own programs a lot easier from that. They don't have the cloud share network that the Digistar 6 has, and the beauty of that is we have a fellow right next door in Milwaukee, their theater has that same system. So we would be able to share everything that they did right here in our own neighborhood, which really does help a lot. Plus, the learning curve would be a lot smaller because they could teach us how to use it.
They could help you with that, sure.
But either one of these are just excellent systems, and you do get pretty large video libraries with them. So we would get as many programs out on the market at a deal. A lot of the planetarium societies have shows that in fact, we wrote a lot of them ourselves that are all put in full dome now. So we would have access to quite a few right up front, and I don't think we'd have to add to this, but we'd have to talk about that, but there would be a yearly budget we'd need for programs down the road, and it would be, I think we could probably do it for between $3,000 and $5,000 a year. You know, I think we could probably do that if we only added a program or two a year, or bought royalties for, a certain show for 3 years or 5 years, and that would we would have to work together with our budget people and talk about what's available for that.
I would think that would go through our teaching and learning committee just like any other, content that we approve, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to work with Erica Miller on that, and I've talked to her about that already. Our own district science that we're working on revamping, and just what needs we'd have. So if we could get the multiple use factor in there, it could really pay off for the Waukesha schools as far as an educational tool, depending on how many other subjects we could involve. So,
Thank you.
Ms. Ronachek?
Thank you. Mr. Como brought up a good point about maintenance. What would maintenance look like if anything should happen with this equipment, or on a yearly, just cleaning or whatever they do to
the
come
new
in?
equipment? Yeah, you get a maintenance contract, and we would have to negotiate just what's covered and what isn't, just like a new car or a house. And many of them have the first 2 years covered if you buy the package, but you could negotiate further down the road. And then it would be sort of like the Star Machine. I'd have to talk to other directors and ask them what they're doing in their facilities, but I could get those numbers back to you. I could do more research on that and find out how much we're looking at. But I don't think it would be, eventually I think we would abandon repairing and maintaining our Star Machine and just use the full dome video for even for the stars and for all the other teaching we do there. And we would abandon our maintenance on the star machine and save that 5,000. So that's one of the first things we would do. As we're phasing into the new system, we would still keep our old catalog running, but eventually we wouldn't, all the other equipment that we're maintaining now, we wouldn't need. So we
then,
would save some there.
so then on that point, how would you then, if someone wanted to start up a planetarium and have slides, don't know who would, but if someone was out there would like this, then how can then you pass that word on that you could, I don't know if you'd be able to sell it, but could we get anything for it, or is it just gonna go
People
sit in
try
a
to.
warehouse? Or?
Yeah, you can. There are planetarium societies and planetarium networks, the Great Lakes Planetarium Association, the Southeast Planetarium Association, Mid-Atlantic. There are 5 big regionals where you can put ads in there, and sell off your used equipment. And there's a fellow in Sun Prairie that wants to start a new planetarium. So, we could probably get some money for our old equipment.
Say, here you go, here's one all set to go. And
Yeah,
like
up
what,
and running,
okay,
yeah.
so that network that you were just talking about, have you looked on there to see these items? Are they on there? So you just, what you were just
not.
talking about was what I was looking for, like, I
Yeah.
know this is crazy, but Craigslist for planetariums, something where you have something somebody else wants.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing? And you're saying that there is. Have you looked for these things on there?
There is a market for old projectors like ours, but there is not a market for the new, people are buying these new systems, the computer-based systems, and because they're, as I said before, because they're computer-based, you get the newest system you can. You're asking, instead of buying a Digistar 6, seeing if there are any Digistar 3s still out there.
I don't
there
know
are,
all
but
these
you
things.
don't want them because they're already outdated.
Okay.
And the new, and it's a great question, and I wish I had a great answer for it, but it's just not done. You take the newest equipment that's available, and you if it takes another year to save up the money, I suggest buying the best that's out there because the longevity of it. Although these 2 companies that I put on the sheet do have computer upgrades included in their package, so you do get to upgrade as you go along.
Do they
Projectors eventually would wear out, but
Do they know that you're considering both and that they need to give you the lowest price?
Yeah, and I've tried to get them down on the software for Digistar, and they haven't moved on that, but the projectors I think we can still negotiate on.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
and the warranty and this, the number of programs they throw in, there are things we can do in there, I think. So if we could try to get that $350,000 mark down to probably 300 or 275, I think that's possible. I think we could do that. Especially with Spitz, they seem more likely to deal anyway. But they need to know we're serious about it. Now, if I ask them to come and do a demo, would you be interested in seeing them come and set up their equipment and actually show the board? Or, I mean, is that something that you would toss around, the idea? They do those, but, at this point, I mean, how would you feel about that?
Well, we have there have been a lot of good comments tonight, and obviously there's a lot of interest in supporting the planetarium, as always. That's never been a change in the 12 years I've been associated with the school board. And as I recall, when this was done last time, I wasn't on the board when it was approved, but they took funds from the land fund at that time, and we were supposed to create a plaque in recognition. Didn't we do something, wasn't there a recognition requirement for it came from the original development up on,
The Priedemann property?
the Priedemann property. I thought there was supposed to be some sort of recognition relative to the planetarium related to the Priedemann.
I didn't know about that. I knew the money came from that sale of that land.
Yeah, I think we should go back and look at those old board minutes, because there should have been something, I believe, that was in there. And if we didn't do that, then that's something we should take care of even going forward, and at least something to acknowledge where the funds came from last time.
Yeah, no one's come out to, I would hope that they would. I mean, if the money came from somebody from the community and if they told me about it,
Across the street there.
we have other people who've donated and I've put plaques up around the planetarium. They've donated for a display or a, you know, display cabinet, or we have a big rotating earth globe, if you've been in there in a while. The Mitchell Park domes we're remodeling, and I knew one of the naturalists out there, and I said, what are you doing with that old earth globe? And they said, why, do you want it? And I said, sure. And so we built a nice display for it, and we got this monstrous size rotating earth now in the lobby. And the person who painted it, he had passed away, but his wife came in and saw it, and she liked it so much, she donated $3,000. This was just last fall. And I put a nice plaque up for her husband who had painted that globe. So little things do happen, you know. There are a lot of things that don't end up on paper, that, like the things we do, the outreaches we do in the community, that I think the planetarium has reached out for. I can't really name them all, but I think if you know somebody or you want
Well,
to
I
look
mean,
into that.
I'm just saying that we did, well, we'll have to check into it, but I believe there was a past consideration that, it's not that they gave the money, it's that they gave us the land, and then we ended up generating funds from that land that we used, I believe, that we allocated for the planetarium, and then I thought there was supposed to be some recognition on that.
The 400,000 for the building.
Yeah,
Right.
400,000
Right.
came from
I
that.
I recall that was the case.
Yeah.
So certainly, if there's not a plaque out there recognizing that, I would be disappointed.
I think the Priedemans back in the 90s gave us the
Yes, but
property.
I
So
remember
this
the
was just
board-
money in a property
But
fund that.
I remember the board made
Carried over.
specific that they wanted to recognize the Priedemans in the facility, as I recall. I wasn't on the board at the time, but that was part of it. And we'll have to check into that. That's one of the things I worry about in these deals, where we say, we'll do this, but when we do this, we're going to do this, and then we don't do this. You know,
About it. But
Yeah,
I certainly
okay.
would
Well,
love to do that.
let's make sure we research that and see if that's the case. It's not a big thing, but it's still something about making sure we keep our commitments. All I would say is I've been down these things so many times that I know that most of this is going to come from the district coffers. That hasn't changed for some period of time, whether it's been swimming pool, the football fields, you know. It ends up being mostly from the district coffers. I would say that if I was coming up with the plan for how the district would do this, is that we'd come up with an amount of dollars that the district would budget for the project, with the remainder of those funds before the project starts to be raised in some manner, okay? And
Makes sense.
and if someone can put together a proposal like that to put before the committee, that would be the way to go. Talking about the existing facility, you have a service provider, you said that apparently is quite familiar with this system that we have now, is that correct?
Yeah, Ash Enterprises, their company planned and built the planetarium. We sat down and worked for months on the design of it, and they designed it out of Bradenton, Florida. And they are planetarium world experts. And they do maintenance, periodic maintenance, and they're the ones that maintain the Star Machine. They represent a company called RSA Cosmos that does full dome videos, and they had a full dome instrument as well. But I sat down and worked with the rep at the last conference, and it seemed impossible to figure out. And so I put it down in one of the minor ones. So I don't want to go with that same company for that instrument. So we've reviewed about 6 other ones. These are the 2 that have bubbled to the top.
Well, one of the questions I have is, back to Ms. Ronachek's comments about would anybody else be interested in our equipment? It's not so much about selling it, but about would it help with the fundraising if we found a location that would take the equipment and they would raise their own funds to build their own facility and their own stuff, knowing that this equipment was
Certainly
coming.
look around, and I talk to everybody I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could try to do that. Certainly.
And I'm not thinking it'd be a big thing in Wisconsin, but I do know when we talk about slides and projectors that, not everybody's in Wisconsin. There's parts of this country that slide projectors are just fine. Mostly I'm concerned about the building that they would need to take this facility. What kind of building's really required? Is it a special purpose building to take the materials that you have? Or could they put it in, like we did here, we just converted a room?
Yeah, it depends. We did it here You can take a dome. In fact, when we moved from here, we sold the dome and the Star Machine back to this Ash Enterprises, and they gave us $3,000 for the Star Machine and $10,000 for the dome. And so we did get some money back from the old theater. So we will get some money from our East Coast control system and our, we're leaving the sound system though in and all the visual, the wiring the way it is. So we wouldn't need to do a lot of changes, but the slide projectors, they don't make them anymore, and we've been maintaining our own because they don't really even have parts. We have a back room full of parts, so we're able to maintain our own projectors. A lot of places, in fact, we've made it this far because theaters that have already upgraded to the new equipment have had their projectors. I mean, I went down to Chicago and got 12 Ectographics last year. We just get them from other facilities that have already changed over. They're really not very valuable. You can go on Craigslist or eBay and buy a whole crate full of Ectographics for $100.
Yeah.
You know, they're just not.
Yeah, and the idea is the projectors are controlled by the computer. Is that how it's set up?
Right.
Yeah, so it's all
It's-
timed relative to the
There's
computer.
a computer and then an interface system, the programming address modules, and then the computer tells those, sends them a signal, and they send the signal to the projectors. So it's a 3-part system. But the new system would only be 2. It'd be the computers and the projectors. They're hardwired right into them.
So in my mind, if we were to find a location, a community that wanted our system as an entry-level system for them to have their first planetarium within their region, we could work with like Ash to have them design.
Ash would do it. They do this all the time.
Right.
When a company upgrades to another theater, they'll buy off the old equipment, and that's their business to refurbish it and sell it. Ash won't give us much for it, but they might. I mean,
Well, I'm not
we could
asking
ask
about
them.
Ash. I'm not asking about that, doing it the same way. I'm saying that
Trying to find our own.
if we found someone that was interested in taking the equipment.
Central School in La Crosse wanted to upgrade their, Central High School in La Crosse wanted to upgrade their equipment, and I could talk to them about it if they're ready to do that. Again, Sun Prairie, these are just nearby ones. Yeah, it's around the nation, not sure about that. It's something to look into, certainly. We could study that.
Yeah, I mean, people around here are a little bit pickier than some people around the nation, so. Mr. Como?
I just want to share you where my thoughts are at right now. But I need to ask one question first. The monies that you raised over the years, and this may be a daring question, do those monies, the income statement of $33,000 per year that we've averaged of income coming in to the planetarium, does that just go into general fund balance, Fund 10?
Excuse me, there's some revenue accounts that
The,
going to.
the ticket proceeds would go into Fund 10, into the general fund balance, and then that's used to fund his site budget every year too. So
Okay, so,
kind of an in and out in the general fund every year.
okay, and so it is, everything does get spent every year or not? Is there a
I don't
fund
have the-
balance on that?
I don't have we don't track it separately for the planetarium. I don't know I don't know if Sherry or I could answer historically the board has not designated those dollars in any form or fashion, so I would say no, we have not been tracking that.
And the site budget covers labor?
We
or not?
budget, but when we talk site budget, we're normally talking his non-personnel side of it, the
Okay.
maintenance agreement, the little equipment replacement budget you may or may not have, supplies. That's generally what I mean when I say site budget.
Yeah, and the reason why I was asking is that was kind of the goal, was to have Dave have that be self-sustaining, that portion of it. And you've met that criteria, I think, over the years, is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Any money we make does go back, or just goes right to the school system, and whether you put it into our accounts or not, it doesn't matter to me, but we have, the donation has a separate account. Anyone who donates, that goes to the Friends of the Planetarium and is used for, That's about 5,000 or 6,000 a year, and that goes for replacing equipment in our lobby, things that are visually, new display cases, new programs for students. That money, the donation money, does go right back into our program because that's friends from the community that gave that money. The other money that we make off other school groups, private shows, public shows, that goes into the general fund and is used by the district. We give it back to the school system.
Yeah, and that's where I was trying to get a sense of what that number really is, because almost in a way you've been paying forward for. We knew this day was going to come where this equipment was going to be, replaced at some point in time. It'd be nice to have sort of an understanding of, has there been monies collected that have just kind of generally gone into general, the Fund 10, have been used for other things within the district? What that dollar amount could have been put aside moving forward for new equipment. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And track that. We can go back and look because it has been put to a specific location code. So it'd be easy enough to go back and run some reports and provide
Okay.
some history.
It was just more of a,
I think Mr. O'Brien touched on it. What I was picturing us was having this discussion here to see if there's a level of interest in even pursuing this, and then coming back next month with a plan where, I didn't want to take the time and put all
Sure.
this energy into a report and then have you say, Darren, we can get 5 more years out of that equipment. And then, so what I'd like to do is to give, Dave was nice enough not to go out fundraising until we had this meeting because I didn't want the board to be surprised by a fundraiser. But also to get the okay for him to start fundraising and for us to come back in January with a plan on how we're going to finance it. And in that plan would be some background information on money generated and donations. There's 2 different pots that we're tracking right now in Fund 10 and Fund 21.
My perspective on past funds is that we put $800,000 into it. So past funds went to $800,000, and future funds are future funds. So looking at past funds and saying that we should reallocate those to some funds in the future when they've already been spent probably 2 or 3 times. I would say that, we have an expenditure here that the board is interested in doing. We're interested in community support for it. And where the money comes from on the school district side is, we'll have to figure that out. If the board has a taste for spending the money to upgrade the planetarium, they'll vote to spend the money off of administration recommendation. And I would suggest that, as we said, we need to allocate X number of dollars to encourage the fundraising for the balance. And because I do think the community would support the planetarium to a certain degree as much as they've supported anything else in this community. And with the science and math curriculum and the STEM and engineering programs. And if you look at the level of science activity in just the last 10 years, I remember when I was in school, and they used to say, I used to love reading about all the planets and all that stuff was big on me when I was a kid. And they used to say, well, here's this book. And he says, this book is about this much of the book you'll have to read, 20 years from now. And that's been true about 10 times more than that. So, because we have planetary explorers, we have the environmental things, which have become huge. We still don't know, as we've heard, whether there is global warming or not, that type of stuff. And it's all about learning about ideas and theories in the different universes and our own environment around us. And the planetarium where it's located, at Retzner, is just a perfect match. And as has been said, I think by Mr. Como, I think it worked well for the football fields to have bricks and things like that for donors. It's the type of thing where you're actually giving money to kids for something that's, really very straightforward. So I don't see that it's going to be a problem to raise some money. I do think the district's going to have to pick up a larger portion than what we raise, that's for sure. And we'll have a later talk about one of the headaches that are behind us, which always helps. And so I do think, as Mr. Clark, that based on the committee's discussions, they're interested. And I think there's a flavor historically for supporting the planetarium. I myself want to see if we can find a way of trying to partner with somebody to transition the equipment to a facility that may have a much greater interest in that type of equipment, even though they have to hold it together with baling wires, you know?
I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we could find Native American communities, places like that in rural areas where, you know, they could build a small planetarium and become a magnet area for bringing kids in from across the area.
Sure. It's an idea.
I mean, it's kind of like having a movie theater. You know, what few movie theaters are around, they're kind of a novelty for these small communities. And a planetarium would be a nice novelty, even if it's an old, and then they could eventually upgrade it, just like we're doing today, you know, so.
So we'll bring back some financing options for the committee to consider in January.
Right.
And Dave can start making contacts with his network in terms of fundraising. All right, thanks, Dave.
So if there's anyone watching tonight that knows a school district that's interested in maybe having their own planetarium, for a fairly reasonable donation, we'd be glad to send it off to them, so.
Good to see you, Dave.
Thank you.
Well, we're starting with the universe, and we'll start focusing in on more local, more local issues.
We won't be contacting any Martians for this one. Okay, well, that was a nice start to the meeting. Get back to our agenda. We have action item, approval of monthly vouchers. Monthly vouchers, anything? Any discussions, any questions come in?
No questions?
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion to approve by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Ms. Madden. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed. Motion passes 5-0. Monthly budget update, information item.
Okay, not a whole lot going on right now with the budget. Everything's pretty much status quo, similar to my last month report. Revenue is about the only thing to report on the revenue side is our federal funding for grants right now is behind. The claims have all been put in a timely basis, but DPI implemented a new system called WISE Grants, and it's a consolidated portal for reporting, and there's been some issues with it, and so they're a little slow to pay right now. So when you look at the revenue side of things, it looks like we're behind in revenue. It's just we're waiting to get paid for those claims. That's about the only thing real noteworthy. In the revenue side, we did get our first SAGE payment, which is the grant that helps fund the Whittier programs. Otherwise, we're right now sitting at 6.29% of our budget, which tracks to last year's 6.61 of spending on the revenue side. For the expenditures, salary and benefits, we're tracking again the same percentages this year as last year for this time of year. Nothing that stands out there. Purchase services, same thing, tracking. The only thing really in non-capital, there's a rather large negative amount, and I just wanted to point out that's a credit that was provided on a prior month's expense. And so it looks kind of odd because there's a large negative, but it was a scholastic credit that came in November. Capital objects is the big one. We're ahead of spending than we were last year. This year, we're at 43% of our budget spent compared to 19.38%. And the big part of that is the wireless upgrade this year is something unique to this year's budget, and a lot of the money has already been outlaid for that. Debt retirement, we just had the Apple lease payment in November, so that's our only debt retirement. It's the final payment on the schedule. Insurance, similar to where we're at for last year. Overall, we're 25.33% of our spending, and that compares to 25.87 last year for the entire expenditures. Fund 27, nothing too remarkable there. The same issue with the WISE grants, that there's grants for the IDEA grants fall under Fund 27, so we're just waiting to get that money on the revenue side. There really isn't anything to point out that's pressing in Fund 27. I did include the tax collection document. It's not, obviously, we're not collecting till January, but it's got all the breakdown of the communities, so you can see where the money's coming from, what different communities. Any questions? I know I kind of blew through that, but there's not.
Well, it's December.
Next month, we'll have some revenue.
Yeah.
We will. We did. We had our aid
Or actually,
payment,
we still do that.
$12.3 million last Monday, so
Mr.
we
Como?
will have that in there.
Just one question. From a cash flow perspective, we're still, no need to borrow. We don't have to use our line of credit.
Correct. We're sitting pretty good right now. We have projected enough to get us through into the January tax collection time. So right now, we're sitting that we should make it without any, and January is our tightest month, so our cash flow still looks good at this point.
Good.
Before we received our OPEB settlement, though.
This is true. That's,
Right.
Yeah, so we don't have a cash flow problem right now.
I was setting us up. I was.
Okay. We might have a debt problem, but we don't have a cash flow problem.
That's right.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Next is the 403B plan approved vendor list. This is an item that we discussed a couple years back. I think it ended up not going anywhere because it was too narrowly focused, trying to get it down to just one vendor, and instead of, I think what we have in front of us is a little bit more attractive, or what's being talked about right now is a little bit more attractive. Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Mr.
would
Clark.
say, I went back and actually viewed the meeting when this committee discussed that proposal to go to one vendor, and I think that's a giant leap. We currently have 17 403B vendors out there. I've provided you a breakdown of the 17, and in looking at this, to me, there's two ways of measuring participation levels. There's number of employees with a vendor, and then there's dollar amounts being contributed to that vendor. And we came up with kind of this composite or combined score of the two, which is in the far right-hand column. We have some vendors that are very heavily used. A handful of them are very heavily used. Then we have some vendors that go, one employee is active in that vendor. So the plan that we're going to start implementing after the first of the year is to start reducing, right now, the vendors that are in the yellow on the table because of such low participation levels. And what our goal is over the next, 2017 calendar year, pretty much, is to shrink down our list from the current 17 to somewhere in the 3 to 6 vendor range. My hope in what that allow us to do is we can still have some discussions with those remaining vendors about fees that are charged. Those fees are charged to the employee, not to the employer, but still, I think we have a fiduciary obligation to get those as low as we possibly can. But one thing I think we're lacking with this 17 vendor approach is it makes it very difficult to do any sort of employee outreach and education programs because all 17 want to be there. And in the fairs from the 403B vendor fairs, in my experience in other districts, because we're not alone in this arrangement with so many vendors, is that people tend to get intimidated when they walk into a room and it's 17 or 15. I think in my previous district we had 13. So I think we can do a better job of educating our staff on the 403B program itself if we can get it down to a few key vendors. So this approach is significantly different. There's really no RFP process. In my mind, the employees have chosen the companies we more than likely will end up with as our remaining vendors when it's all said and done. On the lower right-hand corner, there are some services that I am interested in my vendors being able to facilitate. Not that we would ever use all of these things, but I'd want to know that they have the capability to do that. Can they administer a vesting schedule? What's their strategy on educating staff? What other school experience do they have? What are their fees? Again, I don't know if we'd ever go down some of these paths, but it'd be nice to know we're working with vendors that could facilitate any type of change in benefit structure when it comes to the 403B program. in the bottom of the page is a timeline that I've roughly laid out. It would start, after tonight's meeting. And working forward, we would begin informing staff in January. This is also a good time for us to review all of our 403B documents and our vendor agreements, and just slowly start moving towards, a refined list for the 17-18 school year. I have August in there. It could be a little later than that, could be earlier. You get to summer, a lot of our staff are school year employees, so summer's not kind of a void in terms of it's hard to communicate with staff, those types of things. But so we might have to tweak that a little bit. So that's what we have in mind, and I knew this had been a topic with FNF a little while back. As I mentioned, I went back and reviewed the tape of that meeting just to kind of get a flavor of some of the questions and concerns you had at that time.
Do you remember who was the proposed likely?
Transamerica? Does that sound right?
Yeah, and that's not even on this list.
That was one of the concerns the committee raised at the time. It was a vendor that no one in the district, at least through us, had any sort of relationships with.
And then when just another question, when we talk about, I don't know if we should say the firms, but when a vendor's on probation, what does that mean?
We had a couple of firms that struggled following protocol, sometimes misled their role with the district and our relationship. Maybe we're a little too aggressive in reaching out to staff, following just general guidelines that we have on how they should act.
Okay.
And that's really, that process in notifying those employees is where, you always believed that there was an educational opportunity to better inform staff of these programs, but in talking with these employees through that process, there's some employees who don't participate because I don't think understand it, but even the ones that are participating, there's more to be taught to them, and I think fewer vendors would allow that to happen.
So just from an execution point of view, what it would mean is we'd stop supporting paycheck deductions to other than the vendors that we certify.
Correct.
The employees could continue to maintain a relationship with prior vendors if they choose to by leaving their funds there, correct?
Mm-hmm. Or participating in a post-tax 403B Roth type of vehicle.
Whatever they want to do with the money that they decide they want to put with these people. And that's their own call as to whether they leave their money there or not, but the district would not continue to support putting additional new funds into those vendors. Look, every place I've worked, there's always only been one vendor. I mean, but first was First Wisconsin. My first one was, I think, First Star, whatever you want to call it, First Star U.S. Bank. Yeah. And then
Still have that one?
You're dating yourself now, Kurt.
I've done Fidelity, I've done Voya, and I've done Vanguard. So I've done 4 different ones throughout my career, and I've also had Thrivent for a 403B. So I've done them all. And I shouldn't have, but I've done a lot of them. But it's always been just one with each employer. So if we were as a district continued to offer three major ones, to me that's very generous. I can understand why employees would say, "Well, you're just going to force me to use this one supplier." No, you got a choice of 3. But I would think they would have to be suppliers that would offer a lot of educational aspect, have a high standing in 403Bs. I know Voya is very big. My wife's one is Voya. And obviously Fidelity's big. Those are 2 big ones right there that most likely would make our final list. And of course, there's always the WEA is going to be popular because it's the WEA. So anything outside of that, I mean, they're going to have to justify being there for sure.
One other thing I put on the executive summary, once we get down to 3 to 6, whatever that magic number ends up being, there's nothing to stop us from at that point of going to 1. But at this point, I don't see the need to make that to
No.
make that leap. I think we have a lot of legwork to get to the point to even consider it. So I'm not recommending that at all. I'm not a year later gonna come back and say, okay, we're at 4, now we're going to 1. That's not the goal of this at all.
Well, I think if you end up having 3 to whatever, how many, 3 to, I wouldn't do more than 5, but 3 to 5, then you're telling the vendors that are there right now that they have a chance to be on that list. You know, they're not gonna be automatically just excluded because you're only picking one. So, whether that's, just WA, for instance, if we were just going to go to 1, then WA would maybe say, well, we're threatened because we're WA. No, you're going to have the same chance everybody else has to be on our list. You're gonna get the kind of service that we're gonna require a supplier and vendor for our 403B programs or district. So first step is, I would say, make sure we have criteria set out, just like we've been bidding out healthcare, and then make it so it's to the advantage of the employees to have vendors that are going to help them, you know, better manage their retirement savings. Any other questions from the committee? I do recall, I'm glad you watched the tape, I do recall, it was a big deal about going to 1, yeah. And
was a hot
it just wasn't well launched as a proposal last time, I don't think. It went nowhere. Okay. Mr. Como?
And I know the intent right now is not to get down to 1, but if we ever did go down that road, then we would want to really truly do a full bidding process, essentially. You wouldn't just pick the biggest one with the most people and say, that's it. I mean, companies, from time to time, will change their vendor, and they go through a formal process, and they pick, again, the vendor that's gonna provide the best services and best quality of services, and deliver on financial performance too, having a good mix of choices of investments. But I would expect if we were to ever go down that road of 1, that we would go to a full bidding process and not essentially just choose from where people have been. That could be one criteria as part of that process, but.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's on your rubric of things you're looking for, something you would grade. But to move to an exclusive agreement, to me, that changes your fee negotiations and everything, because it's
quite a bit.
Completely different structure.
But that's a ways down the line, so.
Well, we have, how many employees total in the district?
Probably do 1,800 checks or so.
1,800 checks.
Some part-time, some full-time, but checks, we're
Some
cutting around.
leverage there.
If you want to be one of the 3, 1,800 checks is quite a bit. You know, for one of the 3, we're probably one of the biggest employers in the county, if not the biggest.
So this, you know, these totals of contributions, this is just one pay cycle.
Right.
So we're obviously a serious account for vendors.
Oh, yeah.
And just so the community knows, I mean, we're talking, some of these vendors have 1 or 2, 7 employees. I mean, it's tremendously low numbers, and no business would go down this path of having all these different, I mean, give me a break, so. Any other questions? Wonderful meeting tonight. We discussed the planetarium, which is always a great topic. Oh, we have one more.
One more.
Yeah, this is,
The last one, the OPEB, I'm sorry, I got into a rush. The OPEB settlement that we added on at the end. Did we have some news on that last week?
yeah, Dr. Gray, I think, shared some news with the board, but I just want to let you know that we received 2 wire transfers last week, closing out the OPEB trust issue that's been lingering for the last 8 years or 9 years or whatever it's been. So that part of it's closed, but which is all great work that Dr. Gray's put into this to get us to this point. I mainly put this on the agenda to say, okay, now we budgeted to make the principal and interest payment that we already would have had to have made tied to this, but we also budgeted for an extra principal and interest payment coming out of Fund 10 fund balance. I think now that the settlement's in hand, my office over the next 2 or 3 weeks will be looking at what's the best way in terms of aid impact and tax levy impact to pay off that debt, hold on to the money and just make the payments as they come, and just lay out a better overall plan than what we were guessing at when the budget was approved, because we didn't know when the settlement may or may not come down. So I put down on the executive summary is the amortization schedule, so you can see the remaining payments out there. So I just wanted to let you know this is a topic that we're in the process of reviewing, and we'll be coming back probably in January with an overall strategy.
Do you recall what our interest rate is on the borrow that we have?
4.25.
Kind of high for a district.
We're not getting that right now on the
Yeah.
the revenue side. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we can figure out how to pay it off, that would be good, but,
Necessary at the time.
Oh yeah,
the only comment, any comments from board members first? I don't want to dominate the conversation. The chair's not supposed to do that.
Well, it really feels good to have this finished, settled, made whole, and then a little bit. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I look forward to what you have to present, Mr. Clark. So it's been a long, long time to get to this point, and if there were ever any doubters, everything came out in our favor here. So we're glad to be able to move forward here, and we'll see what you come up with is the best way of applying those funds right now. Glad we're strategizing it, not just paying off, just going and paying off, because there could be some financial implications. So
I just add that, one of the challenges you have when you get caught in this situation is you're not permitted to comment throughout the legal cycle. And of course, that frustrates the community, it frustrates taxpayers, and it frustrates board members to a certain extent. So you're almost like a human punching bag for what was a mistake, I guess, way back when. But I will say that, first of all, the press release that we issued, that we helped draft with our PR person and our legal counsel at the time of settlement, was very well done. We thank the community for their support, and they have been very supportive. And we also thanked Stiefel for their cooperation in helping bringing this to a conclusion. They started it when they kind of got us into it, but they also helped us get things resolved. So I think that was appropriate to express our appreciation for their help in this matter. They didn't have to do that, but they did, and that made all the difference. It takes two parties trying to settle, and I'm appreciative of that. They did that, and it was a stroke of. It was very bright that they bought our debt and then forgave it. That was a very bright move they made that helped make the difference. I would also like to thank the administration, and we had. This happened before Mr. Gray came on board, and a couple business managers back. And when we interviewed superintendents, I think every one of them had the same question about this OPEB thing, except for Mr. Gray. I think he knew he was going to have to handle it, and he didn't have a problem with dealing with.
he actually had somewhat of a plan going into that interview. So wasn't afraid to take it on.
Yeah, we never. And if you look at our superintendent, our present superintendent, I mean, obviously when we interviewed him, his financial, we knew when we wanted someone with a better financial background than our previous superintendent, who was strong in curriculum, strong in staff skills, but not real strong financially, and that turned out being a good decision for us. In addition to this OPEB thing, we had insurance bid out, salary schedule. All that stuff was done before Act 10. We tackled those problems really before Act 10 came in. Every other school district in the state pretty much had to have Act 10 to get what we were able to get without Act 10 for the most part. And that's a credit to our Mr. Gray and his leadership and him taking on the challenges that the board placed in front of him. We went through a couple of business managers having to, it was a little harder on them, but Mr. Gray hung out there and we got it done. So, the administrative support through this has been phenomenal, and calm leadership. And it may not be known, but Waukesha was the lead district that basically managed the entire legal case and strategy. We contacted the legal team. We did all the research. We found out what we were into and took action immediately. It's really a brilliant story that very few, it's a brilliant story except for that we got it in the first place, which is a terrible story. But thanks to the community for being so supportive, and I can't say enough about our community. They never once went after us. They counted on us to try to straighten this out and do what we could to straighten it out, and thank goodness we did. Any other comments from board members? Ms. Ronachek?
Thank you. You said it again tonight, and I just wanted that to be noted, that you said it was a mistake. And I've heard you say that one other time. And when you did, it jumped out at me because I'd never heard anyone say that before. And that's what it was. And to be honest and just say, you know what, we made a mistake. You've said it twice now. And someone else noted that to me the last time you said it. And so I just want to put that out there, that that's honest and it's humble. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I think Warren Buffett said, if you ever hear a good deal that's too good to be true, you probably should walk away. So that.
I never got to implement my plan for this because there's a new product out there now. It's very similar.
We're running.
Borrow some more money and I've got a plan for that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Mr. Como.
I did get a call from Mr. Warren, and he wanted to have me pass on to our board here and our administration, just saying, hey, way to hang in there, way to be patient, way to continue to work through the issues. In a way, we basically, how do we say this? We've been vindicated essentially in this. Although we can say that it was a mistake, I kind of view it a little differently. It wasn't a mistake because we really didn't have the information, the truth before us. We did not have the truth before us. And if we did, then I think I would lean more towards a mistake. But we just didn't have the truth before us when we were making those decisions. So this was a long haul to make us whole. But Mr. Warren just wanted to pass on the congratulations to all of us for hanging in there, for continuing to do our due diligence on this, and he was quite happy with the results. So he's still very much a part of the spirit of this board.
Yeah, well, I'll stand by it was a mistake. I'll also stand by that, I'm glad that the board took the stand they did, that, we were going to take the heat, and we did. And when we decided to file the lawsuit, that was a tough call too, because, you're going up against the big banks and your chances of winning are not good. But we felt that the community was really robbed. And of course, that's how we felt. And unfortunately, we couldn't use the words mistake during the lawsuit because obviously that would hurt our legal case. So thanks, Karen, for pointing out that, it's a good idea to admit when you made a mistake. And I think one of the mistakes that we made across the state is trying to turn school districts into businesses. We're really not businesses. We are here to educate, and we serve the community, we serve the taxpayers, and we serve the community as a whole. We're just not really a business. We're not into the same type of business cycle. We should be doing things smart, like not having 12 vendors for 403Bs, but we're not someone who should be going out and speculating investments of money and things like that, and trying to turn everything into a profit center. It's just not the way public education is meant to be. And so I think we've learned from that. I haven't seen us try to do a lot of that since then. We've tried now for some time to just say, we're here to educate kids, we're here to spend our money wisely and frugally, and we have a board that believes in that. So, okay, any other comments? Okay, thank you very much. Good evening.